they have been really busy with that. So I know that all of their schedules have been getting thrown around all over the place.
And that's a big deal hearing. I don't know how many of our CPC will be joining it, but it's an endurance contest with everybody concerned.
Yes, without a doubt.
So it's 1 minute after 6, but we don't have to be quite as panicked as I thought we were going to be. But I guess we could still call this lash up to order. And I'll just start by saying that we're a little more relaxed than we expected to be. And so if we stumble a little bit, it's because we had changed our agenda to accommodate Chief Medina so that he could speak before anything else happened. And just a little bit ago, he had to bail out because of an emergency in some other direction. So he will not be joining us tonight. So the agenda is being modified again. We'll do our usual Grimble at the beginning and then have ask Commander Collins to give us an update. And following that, we will go directly to Joshua Boone and Elizabeth Bates from the District Attorney's Office. So, I guess I'm going to go right ahead with a roll call of the CPC panel members. We may not all be here yet, but I'm going to give it a shot and see if people can respond. Andre Quinn.
Hello, present.
Yep. And David Zweig.
Present.
And who else is here? Is Graham here yet? Not yet. Idalia, I saw your face there a moment ago. Hi, Idalia. I'm going to mention her name in a couple of minutes again.
Hi, everyone.
Josephine Martinez is here. I see that. Judy Young. I don't see Judy Young yet. Paul Cedillo is here. Yes. Very good. And I'm Bob Carlton and Samuel Nevarez. Let's see here. So we're from, Samuel says, I am here. So we'll count that. He may be commuting because he does work late. Okay, we've done that. Approval of the agenda, which has been changed. The agenda as originally published is the one we're going to be with tonight. So that's the one to approve. Is there any dissension on approving the agenda? Otherwise, I'll declare it approved. I see no dissension, so the agenda is approved. The roll call was satisfactory. Approval of the minutes of last month's meeting, which were posted very nicely. Thank you, Martisa, which were posted on the CPC website. Any problems with approving the minutes of the November forum? No? Well, thank you very much. New and unfinished business. This is fun. Briefly, the Foothills CPC has proposed taking a professional portrait of the 4 officers injured in the shooting in August. The photo sitting is scheduled for this week, and we will present, our CPC will present a framed enlargement suitable for hanging at the Foothills Command as soon as possible. We will also be presenting an 8x10 framed copy of the portrait to each of the 4 officers. And I'm going to just comment that this project was the suggestion of Judy Young. It has taken us a while to get this organized, but this week we will have results. Perhaps I'll be even able to include the portrait in our January newsletter. I think that would be a nice full-page photograph for the January newsletter. So keep your eyes open for that. And we plan to have a plaque engraved appropriately. So all of that is, I think, is very good news, and I think is totally appropriate for recognition of the service and the danger involved in being part of the protection of our communities. And thank you, Commander Collins, and I see Lieutenant Garrett is here. So thank you both, and thank you to all of your team. Thank you for that. The next thing, I'm going to share screen. I hope that's stop. Most disabled screen sharing.
Okay.
It's going to enable me.
Should be ready.
Okay, thank you. And I've got this I wanted to show. This is a flyer for the Nutcracker New Mexico Land of Enchantment version of the Nutcracker. And one of our own, that is Idalia Lechuga-Tena, is dancing in it. I don't know how she gets up on her tippy toes, but I'm told she actually does. Gail and I are going to one of the performances, and I think tickets are going very fast because we ended up in the far corner of the auditorium. So it is not expensive. It is, as you can see here, ticket ranges from $14 to $47. So that's like $100 below most of the other places. So I really would encourage people to consider joining a great group of people. And let's see if I can do it one more time, because we have, as everybody knows here, we, let's see, here we are. Let's see if I can. Okay, as everybody knows, we lost 2 of our team members in recent weeks. And each of them was a valuable member of our CPC team. Vance Cabela and Catherine Volkovic. We really appreciated their participation and encouragement that they gave to our council during their time on the Community Policing Council. So we thank them for their service, and they are leaving to enable themselves to devote more time and energy to other opportunities for active community service. So we thank them both and wish them both well. So that is, and that has been approved by all of us, and I'll send this along to Kelly so that he can include it in our official documents. Okay. So having done that, Commander Collins, are you available to provide an update and take all the heat that we offer?
Yes, sir, I sure am. Okay, so I hope you all got the newsletter. I think Samantha did a pretty good job of putting that together, as she always does. They're a lot more colorful than the ones that I used to put out. So she's way more creative than I am. So I'll start out with some of the calls that we had for the month of November. So during that month, we had 21 commercial robberies. We had no residential robberies, or what we know as home invasions. There were 4 carjackings. A couple of them I'm not entirely certain about. I think there's some other things that were going on with at least 2 of those calls. Robberies to an individual, we only had 2 for the whole month of November. Auto thefts, we had 42 of those. We had no warm-up auto thefts, which is good. So remember, please don't leave your car unattended while it's running with the keys in it. If you have remote start, by all means, but just please don't leave your keys in there. That makes it way too easy. Commercial burglary, we had 21 of those. Largely what I'm seeing on that is they're occurring mostly on the Wantabo corridor, typically from Lomas, stretching all the way up to Montgomery. So in response to that, I have my graveyard officers who are doing kind of a targeted operation along Wantabo, and we're hoping to reduce that because we're seeing a lot of those call times are obviously happening after the business is shut down and it's dark. So I wanted graveyard to take a look at that and do their best to do some proactive effort along the Wantabo corridor, and hopes that we're going to be able to knock that down a bit. Most of them seem to be, it's not elaborate planning on the burglars' parts. Most of them are just breaking front windows and getting in that way, or they're disabling doors. So that's happening right now. We have, for this month, only 12 residential burglary calls, which historically is actually pretty good for the Foothills. Typically, we tend to see more than that in previous months' time, but I know 1 is too many, but we're not seeing the high numbers of those anymore. And auto burglaries are staying, from what I can tell, the calls for service that are coming in are staying pretty steady at about 26. We have had a lot higher months in years past, but that seems to be steadying out a bit. One of the things that the Foothills is also doing right now is we're doing our gift and food drive, and we partnered with Apache and Chelwood Elementaries to try to have donations come in for gifts and food. And I just got a notice from the chaplain a little while ago, our Foothills chaplain, that we actually have food boxes that we're going to start handing out here pretty soon to some of the families that have been identified that are in need of that. So we're already seeing a lot. My conference room and my substation is already starting to fill up. And it happens every year we do this. The residents of the Foothills are so generous that if we ask, we don't have any problem getting things for these kids. And it's really kind of heartwarming and nice to see that happen. Next thing is, I need to thank you all for coming up with the idea of the portrait for the officers. I think that is absolutely phenomenal. That day was really rough for all of us, I think. And to compound it, Sergeant Kenny is retiring, or has retired. So he'll be an at-home person now. He spent 26 years in law enforcement, and about 15 or so of those as an APD sergeant. So he was I always thought he was one of our better field supervisors, because I could just give him something and then just let him go. And I didn't have to worry about how it was going to get handled. He was always on top of his officers to get their tasks done. So I know that I will miss him in the substation, mainly because he's really loud and it's really quiet there now. Oops, sorry, hold on. Those chihuahuas again.
While your dog is talking, can I interrupt and just ask you to send me a note as to what type of donations you would like and where and when to bring them? And I will send something to all of the people on our mailing list in the morning.
Absolutely. Yep, we sure can. We'll have an email sent to you shortly.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So anyway, before my dogs blew up. So anyway, I was talking about how loud Sergeant Kenny is. So the substation is actually pretty quiet now. I can actually get some work done, but I will definitely miss him. He has been a very important member of my team, and probably, like I said, one of the better field sergeants that I have had the opportunity and the honor of working with. So again, thank you for that. I know you've been in contact with Sean about the portrait, and I'm kind of anxious to see how that turns out. So with that, use of force. I almost forgot force. Let me find it. I have it here somewhere. Give me 1 second. Okay, use of force. So we are at, right now, for the month of November, we are down to 0.08 per 1,000 calls. And remember, a couple of months ago, we were about 3 times higher than that. And typically we average somewhere in the neighborhood, just a hair over 1. So we're actually below that. We had a total of 4 for the month of November. So that was 2 level 1s, 1 level 2, and 1 level 3. The highest area command during this audit was actually the Northeast at 1.9 per 1,000 calls. So pretty much everybody was hovering around the 1.0 mark. But Northeast was a little bit higher with 13 this time. Southeast came in at 10 total uses of force, but because of their volume of calls, that puts them at exactly 1.0 per 1,000. And family dispute for the month of November actually was the one that was the highest call associated type with force. Trying to think. We also we're also looking to. I'm actually working on a group that's trying to come up with some ways to make the level 1s a little less time consuming, because we have found that if an officer gets into a level 1 use of force, which is typically very low level, mostly resisted handcuffing is what is deemed a level 1. From the time the officer arrives on the call till the time that the officer is done with their use of force narrative report, it's averaging somewhere around 5 to 7 hours, which is a really long time. And the sergeants are having to wait with the officers because they have to complete their blue teams by the end of shift or before they go home. And of course, it always happens where if a squad gets off at midnight, that level 1 will happen at about 11 o'clock. So then they're going to be stuck until about 4 or 5 in the morning trying to complete all of their documents. And we're having some issues with that because it's actually slowing down some of our response times to some of the calls. So we're in a group that's trying to get this addressed so that way we can try to capture the same amount of information, but in a shorter amount of time. We're just trying to make it more efficient. So as that develops, I will provide that information. So we're kind of in the development phase right now, but I just wanted to let you all know that we are looking at the level 1s because it does tie the officers up. And if you have 2 or 3 officers, those 2 or 3 officers, they're out of service until all of that stuff gets done. And the calls don't stop. And we don't like the fact that when folks call us, they have to wait for extended periods of time for us to come help them. So it's bothered me for a long time, but I think we're in a position now to where we can work on something to still catalog the force, still investigate it, still review it, but do it better. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Bob.
Looks like we have one question that came in, Bob.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, I did not hear her. Probably said, but I did not hear. Were there guns lost this?
Oh, Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me pull that back up. Oh, okay. We had one gun.
One too many, but that's certainly better than most months.
Yep, that is, I mean, we've seen it as high as 12 or 15 in a month. I mean, so that is, that makes me happier. Not completely happy, but happier. So I appreciate the word getting out, and please, I mean, you all see a lot of people. I see a lot of people. Let's just please keep reminding them that, and don't leave your keys in your car. That'd be helpful too. So, and you said there was a question that came in?
Yeah. So there's some context from Gene Hamrick. So a man entered Town Park sometime on Friday at 2 a.m. He found an unlocked door and entered the house next door to mine. He slept until the residents found him the next morning. He was first spotted around 8 p.m. and was on my cameras at 2 a.m. trying to enter my property. With cold weather coming, what should we do? What should we residents do if we see more unhomed individuals roaming inside our walls?
My initial response to that is if they're, I mean, you can always call 242 cops, and we can come out, we can check on them, we can try to offer them some services. I believe if it's during the hours of, I might be wrong on this, but 8 to 4, our community safety folks, ACS, can come out and help with that situation as well. We do run into a lot of that, and it is a concern for us because now as the temperatures are getting colder, we do have some of the folks out there that do need some of that help to get to some type of a shelter. So I mean, easily the easiest thing is to start with us, and then if we can get ACS out there to try to help them from the community safety side, we could certainly do that.
When you say come to us, I think you mean 911, and then the 911 operators are trained to assess the degree to which it needs law enforcement versus the social response.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and obviously the difference between 911 and 242 cops, I mean, if it's not an in progress danger to life or property, then 242 cops is more appropriate to call. If it's somebody who you think just needs our help or needs ACS's help, then the non-emergency numbers. But if you think it's serious, then call 911, and then we can let radio or dispatch kind of sort that out. But they do prefer the 242 cops. I do know that sometimes there is a bit of a wait because the way the consoles work, I'm told, is 911 and 242 are answered at the same consoles. They just have a priority in which they answer the calls. So just please try to be patient if you can.
And they're a little short-handed too. It's a universal situation. So
I have learned, talking with Erica Wilson, who's the director of communications, it can take anywhere for a dispatcher, it could take up to a year to get them trained and on their own consoles. And I'll tell you, I've sat in radio a couple times through my career, and to be able to see how they multitask it's mind-blowing how they do it. I don't know how they do it, to be honest. I think it's actually probably easier to be a police officer than it is to be a dispatcher, because they've got computer screens all over the place. They're typing, they're talking, they're writing. I had a headache when I walked out of there. So please, everybody, try to take it easy on them because they have an incredibly hard job. And the beauty of them is even during like the OIS, the demeanor of the dispatcher was very calm and composed. She wasn't losing her mind. She wasn't, emotional. She was getting things accomplished. And that, to me, seeing how people can lose their minds in chaos, that is impressive. So just, try to take it easy on them if you call them.
and probably great advice for all of us to take it easy on each other.
Yes, and all of us too.
Okay, and we've gone through that. I'm sure there'll be questions raised in the next hour or so. Commanders are available. And I do want to just remind everybody that the Dahlia here is dancing in the Nutcracker. Yay! We're so happy for her, and we'll be there offering support. It's Albuquerque's got some really amazing cultural and social opportunities that we are just pleased when we can take advantage of them. I see Josephine has her hand up. Josephine?
Yes, I just wanted to address Commander and thank him for everything he's done. The drag racing continues on South Eubank. Last night it was really, really loud. And I never called, but my neighbor was telling me this morning that I think she said she called, and 242 cops has you on hold for a long time. So some of the people that were calling are getting discouraged about calling because they're on hold for so long. So I just wanted to bring that to his attention.
Thank you for that, Josephine. And you and I have worked long enough on this drag racing problem. If you hear it or see it, just send me a text. Just let me know, because my swing shift last night, they were extraordinarily busy. But if I can get their sergeants to kind of try to prioritize that a little bit, because they may not even be on the south end of the area command. They may be handling things up north, and unless they know, they're not going to be able to see it. So just send me a text. I'll get it to one of the supervisors, and then they can get some officers over there. I mean, because really in the drag racing thing, at least to stop it for the night, usually a couple of marked units will disperse them and get them out of your hair for the evening. So just send me a text.
Well, I thought about texting you, but it was after 10 and I don't want you to lose any sleep.
No, it's fine. I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm actually up probably till about 11:15, 11:30. And even if it's not a big deal. I'm kind of trained and engineered to answer my phone. So yeah, 10 o'clock is not unreasonable. So if you see it, I want to get some officers and some marked units over there to disperse that. So just let me know. It's
okay,
easy.
thank you.
Of course.
You know, and we've had a couple of really serious motor vehicle crashes up here on Tramway. End of last week, we had one at Tramway and Montgomery that sent 3 or 4 people to the hospital and 6 people injured, and the intersection was shut down. I don't know how your guys and gals go through all of that, and then they go home and play with the kids, deal with the leaky faucet at the sink. And then today we had one at Candelaria in Tramway. I don't know how badly. I think 1 person was hospitalized. It just, and that's not even human. I mean, that's not violence in the sense of a shooting or a knifing or something. This is just unplanned stupidity. Generally, if somebody's doing something that they should know better than doing.
Very true. And I appreciate that, Bob. And a lot of the way that we're able to handle that is, through our training. And then we do have a really strong behavioral sciences group that if we are having some issues with something, we can certainly go talk about that. And that's something that I encourage all of my officers to do, because many years ago, we actually shunned that idea. But I think we're so good at trying to take care of physical health that we tend to lack taking care of our mental health as well. And some of these things that we can't see do have an impact. And it's just important to be aware of that.
Yeah, well, my hat's off to you. So thank you very much. Okay, and having gone through all of that already, it's time for our featured speakers tonight. We have both Joshua Boone, Deputy District Attorney, and his associate, Elizabeth Bates, who is, I believe, Assistant District Attorney. And they're going to be talking about some new initiatives that I was actually surprised to hear a couple of years ago that the district attorney was involved in this sort of thing, because you always think of them as, you know, pedal to the metal, prosecute. And so this is going to be very informative and interesting. So Joshua and Elizabeth, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate that. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so for whatever reason, I'm showing up on the screen twice. When I tested my computer earlier with Elizabeth, it worked perfectly fine. And of course, as soon as I logged into this, one of my screens decided not to work. So I'm coming up on two screens, so I apologize for that. Also, just so everybody's clear, I ended up getting a cold on Thursday. I negative COVID tested already, but I'm completely stuffed up. So if I take some random pauses because I need to mouth breathe, it's mostly so I don't suffocate. So I apologize that there may be some weird awkwardness as to some of the pauses that I make, but that's for my own personal health. I'm just going to get through it. I think some of you have seen the tissues that have been going by. So we'll just make Elizabeth do a lot more of the work. She's generally the brains of this operation anyway. So should be a little bit easier. So quick little background for everybody. As Bob said, my name is Josh Boone. I am the Deputy District Attorney. My position is I run the Metro Division for the DA's office here in Albuquerque. Elizabeth Bates is now going to be the new, what we're going to call her is the community prosecutor within the Metro Division. There's no official title to it, but that is the position that she will be assuming. When are we having you officially start that? I gave you a start date, didn't I?
The 17th of January, so a little over a month. Okay.
So she'll be starting that pretty soon. Little background on myself for some of you. If none of you read the bio, that's perfectly fine. The less you know about me, the more you'll think I'm actually know what I'm doing. Typically, I've been an attorney here in Albuquerque for about 17 years now. I graduated from UNM. I started off as a public defender for a little under 2 years, left the PD's office, went to private practice where I focused predominantly on criminal defense work. And then when the newer administration at the DA's office came in, Raul Torres's administration, he poked me out of private practice defense work and then convinced me to go work for him at the DA's office. And somehow that really seemed like a good idea. And I haven't left yet and he hasn't fired me. So clearly something's working, at least in some correct direction. I take great pride in saying this. Elizabeth Bates was one of the first hires I got to make. And so we actually got her directly from UNM as well. So I got her fresh out of law school and convinced her that working for me and staying was actually going to be a great idea. And if any of you tell her otherwise, just get off the meeting now. That's totally fine. She doesn't need to know this. She's still young and impressionable. Not me. Okay, so with the backgrounds, Bates, did I miss anything?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, just making sure. If I miss something, just do something. I don't know. The idea of what we were going to talk about, and let's see if this works. All right. Let's see how I can do this and not fail. All right, share. So one of the things, we actually do have a quick PowerPoint for you guys, but I will need the able to participate screen sharing.
Kelly's setting it up right now. I can see he's got that focus.
Oh, there we go. Okay, let's see if this works now. Nope. Let's get back to this screen share. Okay. Let's see. Kelly, when you think it's working, let me know.
You should be co-host now. Let's see. You're getting no green button at the bottom?
I've got the green button, but it just tells me that host disabled participant screen sharing. Now, in fairness, I show up on here twice.
Okay. Let's see. Hold on a second.
Bates, you have it, right? If we need to share it with you.
Yeah.
I will make you the host, and we'll see if that works.
High tech is just wonderful.
Okay. What about now?
No, but I can go through everything. If you make Elizabeth, sorry, I just call it Bates all the time.
Okay. Can you give me the hosting principles back?
Uh-oh. Let's see. Host disabled participant screen sharing. Let's see if it's on this one then. I don't know if I can.
You are the power guy now.
Oh God, we are all in trouble. So I apologize to all 54 participants in this group.
Okay.
The holdup is clearly me. All right, so if I do this.
If I had rhythm, I could tap dates, but you all are on your own right now.
All right, we're going to do this the old-fashioned way. I apologize. The PowerPoint wasn't that great anyways. Actually, I take it back. It was the best PowerPoint ever. You guys don't know what you've lost out on. You would have been inspired on so many different levels. I can't tell you what's going to happen. So Kelly, stop working on it. Just let them assume that was a great PowerPoint, okay? All right. So we'll do this the old-fashioned way, and I'll try not to bore you because I promise you nobody wants to hear me talk for that amount of time. So to give you a little bit of background, what we're talking about in the Metro Division is when individuals get arrested, historically what used to happen. So when they would get arrested, when I say individuals, we're talking about misdemeanor level individuals, individuals that are experiencing homelessness, a lot of mental health issues, typically committing nonviolent petty misdemeanor offenses. What would end up happening is those individuals would get arrested, get placed at MDC, and then the next day they would go before a judge. A judge would typically put a bond on them for, $10, $100, and it really varied on your judge. And what would happen is a lot of these individuals would just stay in jail until their next court setting because they couldn't afford the $10 or more. And you would have individuals in custody on a shoplifting case for 30 days, 80 days, crowding the jail, so forth. Now, bail reform has gotten rid of a lot of that. What we are looking at now, so the DA's response and the county's response to it was to say, okay, DA, we want you to step in, and when they get arrested, we want you to just kind of clear out the jail from these low-level offenses. So the directive to us was offer these people credit for time served. So you get arrested on a shoplifting case, we would offer you, your day or 2 days that you were in jail, get out. We're not going to go any further. Your 2 days was just credit, which is a Band-Aid approach. The idea and the intent behind that was really good, but it's caused a separate problem altogether. So now we have individuals who are creating and racking up lots and lots of charges, but we're not solving the underlying issue, which is why they're being charged or why they're committing some of these lower level crimes. What we are doing and what this proposal serves to do is to get nonviolent misdemeanors, basically steer them towards rehabilitative and treatment services. So whether that treatment is for homelessness, mental health issues, addiction issues, and quite frankly, a lot of those three things are all going to be combined into one. A lot of the individuals that we deal with who are going through these cases, they are experiencing homelessness because they have a mental health issue and they're self-medicating by using drugs. And it's a lot. So the idea is, and it's not a foolproof idea. I get it that it's going to be a different way of thinking about these things. But what I've explained to people is what we're doing now isn't necessarily working. So let's try something different and just see what's going to happen. So one of the things that we're going to do, and specifically Elizabeth is the person that is going to be charged with making this program get up and running, is when these individuals come into contact with law enforcement. So I can't remember who it was. There was a nice person who commented to Commander Collins that somebody was breaking into the home next to hers, looking for a place to sleep, may have been looking through her house too. What we're looking to do is, if law enforcement, when they make contact with that person, instead of just booking them immediately or then automatically charging them and have that person go through the system, what we're going to look at doing is trying to immediately get them into the place where we're exposing them to services for, homelessness or addiction or mental health or whatever we can assess, and see if that's going to try to get them out of that. Because what we will see and what the studies will show is somebody may start off in a low level offense like that, but if they're continuously experiencing these things, it is going to lead them into a higher risk category, likely committing violent felonies. And what I don't want to see, what Elizabeth doesn't want to see, I can tell you, anybody from law enforcement, Commander Collins, we don't want to see those individuals move from the misdemeanor level into that felony world, because that's just creating a bigger and bigger problem for us here in the community. So the Metro Court has generally gotten on board with us about this. We've asked for time, space, and a judge to help us with this. Judge Dominguez has been really, really good and is very open to this idea of now kind of processing the court system to accommodate this. I have my cheat sheet up here so I can still look at it even though you guys can't. And Bates, if I miss anything, just jump in and interrupt me. For the love of God, please. So one of the things that we did talk to, we have talked with quite a bit of our law enforcement partners along the way about this. And one of the benefits that we're really looking at trying to do from the DA's office, and this is a push that my former boss, some of you may know him, some of you may not know him, but it was our chief deputy was Chuck Barth. He unfortunately passed away about a year ago. But one of the things that Chuck Barth really was a big proponent of was having a district attorney at the booking center or the prisoner transport center. And what that would allow to do is, if Commander Collins gets a text and he's like, hey, there's somebody in the neighborhood, they clearly look like they're experiencing some issues, Commander Collins can then direct his sergeant or whoever to go down and contact that person. If it ends up leading to an arrest, they can then be brought to the booking center and a DA can immediately assess the person and say, you know what, let's try and get this person into rehabilitative services immediately. And still, we're not adding charges, but we have that charge if we need it. So a big part of this is actually working together with the law enforcement agencies and the officers who are actually in the field contacting these people. And so it's working with them, with the court, with the DA's office, and trying to, when you talk to everybody, whether it's this group, a different group, there's a lot of services that are available. There's very few places that have actually taken all those different services and put them into one cohesive group. Part of what we're trying to do is not reinvent the wheel, but just make sure that all those spokes are coming together in one specific area, that we can easily get those services to the people who need them the most. And so that's kind of the other idea behind it. Now, the benefit obviously seems pretty open, but everybody's got to have a stake in this. And that's law enforcement, the courthouse, the jail, the DA's office, the individuals. And a lot of these individuals that we're dealing with, I keep picking out Commander Collins because he's the only one I talked to. He's coming up on my screen as law enforcement, so I apologize to him. But these are individuals we see all the time. And, you know, rehabilitative services is not a one-time deal. It's not you go to rehab one time or you get services one time. A lot of these individuals we're going to deal with, I mean, I hate to say it, I use this example, but it could be the 5th time that we've seen this person, and we come, you know, they're coming before us again, and they're like, you know what? I was sleeping outside of this methadone clinic one time, and that seems like maybe a good idea. I'm getting tired of being high and on the street all the time. It may be something as dumb as that. But our idea is to get them exposed to those services. So when they're ready, they're going to be able to do it. I have a question that says, oh, question went away. Let's see.
There is a question. I could read it if you'd like.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. So this is from Jennifer Lopez. Would restrictions or requirements regarding drug use be in place for these folks getting arrested in order for them to gain access to services? If so, they are just going to remain on the streets. Will placement into rehab services be mandatory?
So the idea is nothing that I'm going to have you do is mandatory. When we start talking about mandatory things, then I'm talking about really charging you, okay, and using kind of the strong arm of the law to effectuate punishment. Now, with some individuals, and again, everything's going to have to be case by case. I wish there was an easy model that says this problem fits here and I can just easily put it there and that is going to solve all the issues. Unfortunately, it doesn't. And there's always going to be some of those cases, Jennifer, that they're not going to work. And we're going to have to, we're going to have to pursue legal action against them. Elizabeth and I were talking today about a case that she just prosecuted somebody and she put in, what did you say they did? 9 years?
9.5 years at DOC.
Right. And by all accounts, this person likely is somebody who started small with misdemeanor crimes, low-level offenses, and it escalated to that point. I think the exposure, what was the exposure on that guy?
The exposure was over 100 years that he was facing.
Right. And so one of the things that we have to balance, Jennifer, too, is public safety. And that obviously is going to come into it sometimes. And you're right. It's not going to always work. I would like for it to be voluntary. Sometimes we have to use the strength of what's behind us to get people to services. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But it's a good question. I have too many questions coming in all at once. So let me do this. Let me give you guys a couple of quick things real fast, and then I will open the floor up to all questions, if that works. Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up from Paul, and since I see him on my screen, I'm going to assume that means yes. So benefits to everybody on this, obviously, kind of goes through without saying some of it. But the idea that I want is we're trying something different, and that's really the big idea. Historically, the DA's office has taken a hands-off approach from diversion, getting people into programs without the idea of filing charges. So what we want to do in this particular instance, is look at it differently, okay? And by differently, I mean we have to think about this differently. We have to go through and actually conceptualize how we're going to treat individuals. The easiest solution, obviously, would be you know what, if the state of New Mexico or the city just had unlimited resources and there was free treatment for everybody around anytime they wanted, that would make life certainly easier for everybody. If I could snap my fingers and make that happen, I certainly would. I think most people would do that, but that's not the case. So some of it is having to work together and just look at the different things that are available. So let me end it there with my talking and then go through the questions that are coming in.
If I could just read one of the questions, because I think I know a little bit of the background. One of the question from Stephen Seifert says initially the approach sounds good, mentions synergism with what we would have been briefed earlier with the county behavioral health department and with the Department of Albuquerque Safety Department. And with the county behavioral health, everybody that comes out of MDC goes through an exit facility where these services can be made available. But management of the behavioral health department says some of these people, it's going to take 6 or 7 or 10 or more times before they do what you said, Joshua. And that's just say, well, this is really dumb. Why do I keep doing this? Maybe there's an easier way.
Yeah, and I mean, yes, the simple answer to that is yes, you're right. I wish there was a simpler way, but the idea is if we can get them more exposure. So one of the things that we're talking about in the courthouse, one of the big programs that we've been working with and trying to get up and running is the forensic navigation program through UNMH. Now, what that's going to do is really kind of focus on individuals who are suffering through a lot of mental health or competency issues. A lot of their information is obviously going to remain private because we're doing formal diagnostics and stuff like that. But it is going to be another option when these people go through the reentry center that we can, our idea is to identify these individuals as soon as we possibly can. So that way we can make contact with them, because the studies show, experience shows, the minute you make contact with them, if you get them exposed immediately, it's going to be I don't want to say a higher success rate. You're going to have a better typical outcome with that person. And it still may take that person 4 or 5 times to get there. But if we know and we can assess this is a high needs individual, then really that's another good component, because the other real good component is if we know that information, that this is a high needs individual, well, then when Commander Collins is talking to his sergeants who are talking to his officers in the field, and they can go out and they're like, oh, hey, this is Josh Boone. He's a high needs individual. And anybody who works with me would assume that. But he's a high needs. What we need to do is probably look at calling somebody for crisis intervention. And immediately start making those decisions so that we're de-escalating things on the back end now. So the work that we put in up front will actually do more work for us, good work for us in the end. So one of the things that Commander Collins said was on those use of force, I would hope that we would have maybe even less of those. So was there other questions? Did I miss something?
Just make a comment that it sounds like prevention is cheaper than correction.
Yes, it always is. One of the questions was, how does this differ from leads and or ACS? So it doesn't really differ. And what one of the things that we're trying to do in this is not get rid of leads or ACS. Both of those things are great. We want them to use it. One of the problems is, from our perspective, and I can tell you, is leads is probably being underutilized. And that's not through a fault of law enforcement. That's not a fault of the DA's office. It's a great program. It just needs to be utilized better, and probably say, okay, let's try to use it for these situations. Let's try to use it for these situations. And it creates more communication between the DA's office, APD, BCSO, state police. It's going to force us into those communications. So again, my idea would be an officer could even call the DA and say, hey, this is what I have. Is this a good leads program here? Is this somebody who looks like it's good for that? And they can get that second opinion if they want it. And hopefully we could actually start utilizing that leads program even more. ACS, same thing. I would love for ACS to be able to come out because sometimes like ACS has to come out and officers will have to file charges. But the beauty is if we have that person, the DA can ultimately say, you know what, I don't want to do charges. I don't think this is right. Let's go in a different direction with it. So it's a big kind of going around with that. Options are good. Oh, I heard options are good, and I'm going to leave it at that. Options are always good. Let's see. But these separate efforts should, in my view, be more aware. So yeah, that's part of one of the things that Stephen is saying is that options are good, but these separate efforts should, in my view, be more aware of what each program is about and doing routinely so that there's no exacting duplication of efforts, but facilitating the best available outcomes. So one of the things that Stephen's talking about is we have all these things and it doesn't appear that anybody's talking to each other. And you're right. It's one of the things that we have discovered. And that's one of the reasons that we are doing this, because the intersection where the DA's office comes into play is when that arrest typically happens or that summons comes in. That's typically when we get involved. So our idea is that when that information comes to us, we can then kind of get everything around it and bring it closer to one. So that's also another purpose of this, Stephen. But you're right on that.
The Albuquerque Journal had a lead story for the last 2 days, Sunday and Monday. Page 1, upper left-hand corner, above the fold, long stories about the issue of drug-fueled crime in Albuquerque, and especially now with fentanyl. But previously, a few weeks ago, one of the APD commanders was saying, and I believe him absolutely, that most crime is related to meth. And, you know, so we've got meth and fentanyl and people around the city saying that we're just overrun. So how does your organization deal with that or fit in?
So one of the things that we would be looking at doing, sorry, I saw this. There we go. Okay. So it's a difficult balance. And I don't know that there's a good answer or right answer when I say this. And depending on who you talk to, some people are like, all drug crimes shouldn't be crimes. And then you get to the other side of it where people are like, no, certain drug crimes do need to be crimes. Like I said, I don't know what the correct answer is on this, but what I can certainly tell you is from our perspective, if your addiction, there we go, sorry. If your addiction is fueling crime, that's where we need to be intersecting and putting a stop to it. Now, the goal would be through diversion initially, right? Let's get you off of being addicted. And if we can do that, then we're not going to see those other crimes. Now, sometimes we're past that. I think Elizabeth talked about that today in the case that she had. It's sometimes we have to just go forward on those cases and put people in custody for long periods of time. And I'm not a huge believer in that everybody should always go to jail. Diversion should be the first option, but jail is always an option that should be on the table when that addiction is now fueling violence and other things. So our idea, again, is if we can stop them, because typically what you're going to see, you know, the Commander Collins could probably vouch for this too, so I'm just not wildly making things up. But what you're going to initially see are individuals who are, you know, maybe shoplifting on a lower level, so smaller items, because they're fueling that addiction. They're doing it for the trade. When that ability runs out for them, then you're going to start seeing them move to other things. Shoplifting with violence, shoplifting as they're, you know, assaulting the individual on the way out of the store, moving into auto theft, into those kind of levels of crime. What we want to do is get them from getting to that point. And again, the DA's office is not like the saving grace by any means of like, hey, we're going to cure people. That's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is get them to where they're going to have the tools and the resources to help themselves do it. And if everybody gets, the help or treatment and the resources that they want, then I'm perfectly fine without taking any credit from it.
Do you feel with this shift in mindset, we have enough infrastructure, people, services, facilities to make it happen?
Both yes and incredibly no.
It just feels like by doing this, it's gonna. There's so many intake of these individuals that are coming into your office from APD and other services that will we overrun the system?
So what I want you to think of is like this: all these people we're already intaking anyways, right? So what I want to do now is intake them a different way. I want the court to think of it different. Literally the procedure and all the boring things that nobody cares about. I want that to change, because by changing that will have a vast outcome difference on a lot of it. Now, on the resource side of it, yeah, we had always used more, okay? All this money they talk about that the legislature having this one-time money, I'm like, yay, use it for resources. But I'm obviously not on the LFC, so, I don't get to make that call. I can just ask.
I'm going to just issue a very short apology for anybody that gets confused with acronyms and whatnot. ACS does refer to Albuquerque Community Safety, and we try mightily to avoid overwhelming people with acronyms, because there are so many, and unless you work in the field every day, you spend, by the time you decipher what the acronym is, the subject has changed. So bear with us, folks. We'll try to be good.
I apologize, and somebody tell me sometimes to just shut up because I'm using too many acronyms or legalese, and that's my own fault. I apologize about that at times. And Jennifer made a comment about the same individuals at the corner. Our hope is, by doing this, instead of having to send the city out to clean up these areas, okay, quite frankly, they're typically at the freeway in one of the intersections is usually what we're looking at. My major intersection that I deal with is Carlisle and I-40. What we're hoping to see is that when these individuals are exposed to more resources, we're not going to see them on those intersections anymore. We're not going to have those same problems. This isn't, and I'll tell you right now, this is not what we've envisioned to be a quick fix by any means. It's a process. Raul will tell you all the time, I think he's met with this group. He steers a pirate ship, and he can steer it in a direction, but sometimes it's not the fastest moving pirate ship at times. It takes a little bit to get it moved in one direction or the other. And that's often what we're looking at with these situations. And if there's no other questions, that means everybody's perfectly satisfied with every answer I've given and is 100% on board. So, and everybody obviously go see the Nutcracker. Bob, I think you're on mute. Were you saying something?
Mute function gives up after a while. The question is asked, what exactly does COAST mean? I did it, but I can't dredge it up right now. Anybody have it at the tip of their tongue? COAST. I know Susan Begg knows it.
It's in the Crisis Outreach Support Team.
I'm sorry, Kelly, what was that?
Crisis Outreach and Support Team.
There you go. So let's say it very clearly. Crisis Outreach and Support Team. Okay. I don't know who they are specifically, but if somebody gives me a little bit of information, I'll put something in our next newsletter.
Okay.
Okay. So I think that one of the questions there was perhaps best directed to Commander Collins. Paul, do you think that's correct? The one with the people fighting in the streets?
Oh. Did you
Yeah,
see that?
Trying to scroll up and find that one.
It's from Jennifer Lopez.
Yeah. So the city actually twice a week, I have a meeting with solid waste, ACS, Family and Community Services, and some of the other outreach providers. We all do this via Zoom. We do keep track of areas of concern in the city that all of these resources will go to try to clean up. APD has aligned with all of these entities because the thing is that, and I've learned this because I used to think growing up that, you know, the cops were the answer to everything. And we've come to find out that APD is actually a small component of this equation. It takes a lot of other city entities to try to manage some of these challenges that we have in these areas. So just know that Mondays and Fridays, myself and all the area commanders meet both of those mornings at 9 a.m. And we try to come up with solutions to try to help take care of this. What you're describing out at Tramway and Central is not uncommon, which is exactly why my proactive response team spends the vast majority of their work week at Tramway and Central, because we do have a lot of traffic up there, and solid waste is aware of it. I know that park maintenance is aware of it. We're actually, sorry guys. I think they're barking at my inflatable snowman out in the front yard. It keeps moving. So anyway, just know that there's a lot of effort behind the scenes in trying to handle this stuff. And again, much like it's been described, this is a slow process to try to get it addressed. Now they stop barking. Isn't that cool?
Based on just your experience, Commander Collins, I know you guys have been battling this with help from other services. Central and Tramway comes up a lot. Do you feel like there's been a lot of wins there? Do you think it's getting away from us? Just kind of curious your personal thoughts on it, because a lot of us live in that area, and we see it daily, right, in our daily commute, and it's hard, right? It's you see broken glass everywhere. That's something that I'm starting to notice even more, is every shop has a broken window in it, and so it's starting to feel a little worrisome, right, for especially the residents.
No, I think we do get some wins up there, but the moment that we leave, they literally fill back in behind us. And unfortunately, with the way the area command is laid out, I mean, it's 45 square miles, and I do have to give attention to the northern and central parts of the command. So we do leave there sometimes, or if PRT is off or not during their working hours, then these things pop up again. And it's kind of, in a way, kind of holding back the ocean with a broom in some cases, because sometimes it's overwhelming. And I know that Lieutenant Garrett and his officers, they spend a great deal of time up there. And I actually have swing shift kind of focusing on that as much as they possibly can, but also remember that swing shift is the busiest time for calls for service. So their proactivity level is going to be much lower than the other shifts, because they're just literally bouncing from call to call to call from the beginning of their shift to the end of it. But I do make my concerns known in the Monday and Friday meetings, and we're just trying to get up there. And it's, the thing, even talking to solid waste, they're pretty tapped for resources too, because it's not just my area or our area that they have to deal with. They spend a lot of time in Coronado Park. They spend a lot of time at Pat Hurley Park. A lot of time in some of the Southeast area command parks, trying to just get ahead of the litter and trying to clean up. So I wish I could say more on that. I do. We are going to have we're going to rebid in January. And for those of you who don't know what a bid is, every year APD. So I'm the only one that stays behind every year. I stay at the Foothills. The lieutenants, the sergeants, and the officers bid yearly. They can choose days off and supervisor depending on their seniority. But we're doing another one that is going to actually rework our shifts a little bit to try to maximize the officers that we have. And that should hopefully take effect sometime early February. So I'm really looking forward to that, because then I'll be able to deploy the assets a little bit better within the area command to get them onto some of these challenging areas.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A question. I was just going to say, a question came in about, are arrests ever made for these when you go out? I believe you've said that warrant arrests usually are made, but maybe is that it, or do you see other potential arrests?
Well, there are arrests that are made if we see somebody committing crimes. I know that our PRT team will do kind of a mixture of the diversion where it's appropriate, and also do citations. We can issue citations, or we can issue criminal summons. That's all enforcement in lieu of arrest. So we don't actually physically take custody of somebody. We just write them a ticket and we let them go about their way. It just really depends on the crime, the situation. And if there's definitely warrants, the PRT team averages at least 1 to 2 warrant arrests every day they work. And that's, 3 officers right now, because I do have one on light duty. But sometimes they'll have 3 or 4 in a day, depending on if all of them are real close together and it's really busy. So the PRT team is incredibly proactive in doing that. But there's a wide range of things that we could do, but they do mix in the diversion programs as well.
One of the things that I've noticed since I moved to Albuquerque is that because, and this is partly observation and partly my opinion, because you're so strapped for people and you're not out on the street, that it seems that people get away with stuff as far as driving goes. And there's a general feeling that they can get away with it and they do more. I mean, I just can't believe how many red lights I see people drive through. Red lights on. The other day, guy did a left turn on a red light. I mean, and I stopped at a stop sign, as I'm supposed to, and the woman on the left, who had 2 children in her car, came up to the stop sign and did a California stop, which is just driving through at 10 miles an hour, and passed me. Well, I was stopped waiting. I mean, it just happened like that. And I just have this this is the what I get from this is that because the police are not there, because you can't be, because you don't have enough here, that people just think, well, you know, it says 40 miles an hour, but, you know, 60 is fine, you know. And it's just an attitude that's been building, I assume, over the years. I moved from further up I lived in the up in the mountains east of Santa Fe, so I was more familiar with people driving on the highways and the rural roads and in Santa Fe. So Albuquerque is quite a shock.
Yeah, and the officers report that as well. And when my family drives around Albuquerque, they definitely give me an earful about all of the traffic violations and the speeders that they see. And you're right. I mean, I wish I could have officers everywhere. That's just unrealistic. And even our traffic unit, they run a lot of targeted operations in areas. I talk to Commander Beers with pretty good frequency about the issues on Tramway, the issues on Montgomery, the issues over by Josephine. And it's just a matter of them getting it out into their operation, because remember, they're also being pulled by 5 other commanders who have the same complaints. And I don't have a good answer for that other than just make sure that we're all doing our defensive driving as best as we can. Stay away from them, let them pass you, don't argue with them, just let them go, because we've seen road rage pop up because of that.
Collins,
and nobody's. Somebody say something?
Yeah, sorry, my video's not working. This is Josh Boone. I just wanted to interject for Commander Collins on what Mr. Polk had said. One of the other things that the officers, and a lot of people do not realize this, it's not enough that the officers just write the citation. In New Mexico, not only do they write the citation, the officers are then required to go to court and actually prosecute that citation. So what we've essentially done, what we have created, is officers now have to essentially become prosecutors for criminal activity that are misdemeanor offenses. So I know Jennifer had said something about this. Graham, when you were talking about your red light person making the wrong turn, the officer not only has to be in the field, see that infraction, write the citation, and then go to court and actually prosecute it. And this isn't typically a one-day court thing. This could be 2 to 3 days, or two to three separate occurrences, I should say, going to court. Because I can tell you, as a former defense attorney, I used to love officer prosecuted cases because I could spin wheels on them. Not that they weren't trying hard, if they weren't smart, but they didn't go to law school. They didn't have the experience. That's, you know, they didn't go to the academy to become attorneys. They went there to become police officers. And it's another failing function, quite frankly, of the system that is not always on APD. I always remind people when they're like, it's law and order. That's right. The cops are the law. The DA's office becomes the order. And they're two components. So that's when you already are limited resources, you're limited officers, and then you're making them do all this additional work. Now you're even more limited officers than where you started with.
Well,
and it's a weird
think,
procedural thing. I hate it, but it is what it is sometimes. Sorry.
I think more of what I was aiming for to point out was not that the police should necessarily be stopping these people. But the police being visible, then they're less likely to think they can get away with things. And if the police don't necessarily have to write a ticket, they can stop somebody and just point out that the next time they're seen doing that, they're going to get a ticket. And then they know they're being watched. And I think that is, and now Commander Collins can tell me I'm right or wrong, but I think that goes a long way. And I just think that I know that when I was, of course, this is back in England, but it's still police and people. And when I first started to ride a motorbike, I came up to a stop sign. There was a policeman walking there because the cops used to walk in England more than they drove. And he stopped me and explained that I had applied the brakes incorrectly the way he watched me drive up the stop sign. And he gave me a lesson because he'd gone through motorcycle school. Another time, I was driving and I was stopped by the police, again in England, and I was reprimanded because I had given somebody the right of way when I had the right of way. I was doing it to be polite, but he said I would likely to cause an accident by doing that, and that made me think. And you get a respect for the police rather than being getting a ticket for anything, but being just stopped, and it's shown that you are being watched, that they know what's going on.
I'm going to just interject. When we moved here 17 years ago, one of the columns in the regular columns in the paper was the Road Warrior column. And somebody asked the question, and I hope it was sarcastic, but I wasn't sure. The question was, how many cars are allowed to complete the turn at an intersection after the light turns red? And I thought, do I want to drive out here?
I say at least 2.
Oh my goodness. Well, we've gotten away from Ms. Bates and Mr. Boone and into some other areas, but I think this is important. And I think the question that Ms. Brown just raised in the chat, how do we as citizens best address the requirement for a police officer to be in court for traffic tickets? My goodness, one of the suggestions that I've read is that they should be able to participate virtually from wherever they happen to be when their case is actually called, instead of having to take the day and go downtown and park and schlep their body up into the court and hope that their case gets called at a reasonable time. But
so I can tell you from the DA's perspective, and I'm glad you can't see my face right now because I'm laughing hysterically about this. I would love for us to have the officers go virtually for traffic tickets, because my position legally, I don't know that I'm right entirely, but I like to think I am all the time, is that if it's a traffic ticket and it's a non-jailable offense, so it's only a penalty assessment, then officers should be able to go in and deal with this virtually. Because there should not be a confrontational issue if there's no actual criminal jail sanction. Now, I won't get into the legalese weeds on that, but there is trying to get the traffic court set up a little bit and get cases resolved sooner for many individuals. But ultimately, remember, everybody has the right to have their day in court. It is part of the Constitution and the system that we have. One of the things that we are working on doing, and if I say your name wrong, I apologize, Starline, is the idea that not only is it officers going in on traffic tickets, but making officers not have to spend as much time in the court component that we have. For instance, officers are required to do pretrial interviews, and Commander Collins, I know, has done 1,000 pretrial interviews in his day. I think he's probably done pretrial interviews on cases that I had when I was defense attorney. But one of the things that we're moving to with officers and body worn cameras is, why are we asking officers to give an interview about something that's completely recorded? Because it takes time away from the ability for them to be in the field following up on investigation and work like that. So there are things that we are doing I believe it was, I apologize, to Starlin again. What can you do as citizens? Talk to your local state reps and just be like, great, officers are wearing body worn cameras. Why do they have to do pretrial interviews? Why are we the only state in the nation that requires this? Why isn't there a bill that's going to the legislative session that's supposed to focus on crime here in the next 30 days? That is going to help our officers be in the field and less time on other things. That would be what I would do. But again, I can't tell you what to do. But I know from the DA's perspective, that is one of the things that I'm pushing for, at least on the misdemeanor side. Get rid of officer pretrial interviews entirely. And that'll create things to move faster. So there's things that you can do. Certainly feel free to reach out. I know Commander Collins probably has a lot of other ideas, probably in a similar vein and fashion.
Wow, well, we have some very active members of the state legislature that live, that represent our area here. So I think if you have strong feelings on any of these issues, let's talk to our legislators and our city council people and see if we can get some movement, because I don't know, Commander Collins, how many officer days do you lose in a typical month, would you guess, to court appearances where it could be done a different way?
Well, Metro Court is what we're talking about. That usually handles our low-level offenses and the traffic issues. It's open typically Monday through Friday, and it depends on what shift you're on. Really depends on how much you're losing. Day shift, those officers can be in court a couple days a week. They try not to schedule them every day, but they try to. Our court liaisons try to spread it out a little bit, but it could be 1 to 2 days for day shift, and they're going during their shift. Swing shift has the ability to go sometimes in the morning, so it's before shift. Sometimes they'll get hit with an afternoon setting, and it could be, again, 1 to 2 days. And then graveyard, when they get off at 8 a.m., court starts 8:30, 9 o'clock. So they've been up all night, and then they have to wait to go to court. And sometimes they're there for, half an hour. Sometimes they're there for 4 or 5 hours. It's really kind of depends. I know that for my experience, and I was thankful to Josh for bringing up the officer prosecution cases. I mean, that wasn't something that we were really prepared for in the police academy. They just handed me a folder and said, here, this is your shoplifter, go and do your thing. And I'm like, what thing is that? I've never done this before. So I didn't understand how to address the court. I didn't understand a lot of the procedure. So it's something that we kind of had to learn over time. But it does. I know that I was talking a few years ago to a couple of DWI officers that were friends of mine, and the average number of continuances for a DWI, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 4. So that's 4 separate settings for a DWI trial.
And the officer has to be there for each of the 4, or the case gets dismissed.
Yes. So, I mean, that's where we run into some of our problems with prosecuting DWIs, is there's excessive continuations on this. And sometimes the officer might be sick, might be on vacation, might be stuck on a call. May have even just the court case slipped his or her mind. And there's mechanisms that our department will handle missed court. We'll look at why the officer missed court, and then we'll apply the appropriate correction to that. if the reason doesn't match one of the appropriate reasons to miss court. So, I mean, it's a lot. It's a bunch.
And not to sound like a penny pincher, but they're on the clock when they're at court.
They are, yes. It's anybody, if day shift, unless it's on their day off, then they're just being paid their regular salary or the regular hourly rate. If it's during their off-duty time, yes, it is overtime for court. They have to be in a paid status. Yep.
Wow. Are there, I'm a little overwhelmed just at this moment with these thoughts. I sort of was aware of these, but they weren't part of my active consideration. Are there further questions tonight? We're at 7:30, so we've got some time left, but I don't want to just drag this on unless folks have issues that they feel they want us to address. Josephine?
Yes, I'd like to ask the commander, the other day when we came from the chat from your house, I came down Tramway and Central, which I don't like to do at night. And I noticed these people walk across the street. Can you hear me? They walk across the street and before you know it, you're right on them. And I'm so worried that somebody's going to hit one of these people because there's no reflectors on them or anything. What can be done to kind of keep these people from jaywalking and stay a little safer, because there's going to be some catastrophes up there with these people just walking out in the street. And it kind of freaked me out because I was coming down and this guy just walked out from nowhere and scared me.
Well, I can tell you that when the officers are on Central, if they encounter people jaywalking, they will typically stop them. But aside from that, I mean, we're not going to be able to keep everybody from wandering out into the streets. I mean, I've seen it. I see it actually a lot downtown on 3rd Street, 4th Street. There's quite a bit of folks that they seem to have no regard for vehicles, and they just walk out in the middle of the street and kind of expect you to stop. Mm-hmm. So we're doing our best to try to curb some of the jaywalking that we see. And again, I'll need all of your help to just really do your best to pay attention. If you start seeing pedestrians, slow down a little bit, because they're seemingly getting more unpredictable as time wears on. Kind of goes back to what Graham was talking about, that they just seem they can kind of do whatever they want. But when we do see it, we do our best to address it.
All right, thank you. I just
I know it's disheartening. I mean, and you should be able to just drive down the street and not have people literally jump out in front of your car. And I certainly understand that. But we will continue to do our best to try to curb some of that.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commander Collins, sorry to bring up the broken windows again, but I just had a question on the businesses along Central. I'm seeing that, there's a lot of them boarded up. Do you know is it just pure vandalism, or are you hearing that these individuals are breaking the windows, going in, stealing? And I was just curious, because if that's what's happening, I worry about losing some of these businesses that are on Central. But I didn't know if it was vandalism or actual theft.
I think it's actually a good combination of both. I was talking about some of the commercial burglaries that were occurring on Wantabo. The second most notable area is going to be the shopping center at Tramway. So I think you do have a combination of both. And I know that we've been in contact with several of those businesses to try to get them some assistance. And again, it just goes to me being able to put more officers up in that area more frequently, and really at the times when this is occurring, because from what my information is telling me is that it happens after they're closed, which would be kind of a late swing shift or even through the graveyard hours when nobody is there. So I'm really hoping that this new bid coming up will give me access to more officers that I can just direct activity in those locations.
The question came up in terms of reminders of officers. I know that we've seen cases where the courts now are taking a proactive approach to reminding people that have court dates that they're due in court tomorrow or later today or whatever it is, using cell phones and whatnot. Is there a diary system of automatic reminders for all of the officers as well, so that so it doesn't slip through the cracks?
I'd be lying if I told you I knew 100%. I know that there is a website that officers will check and are required to check. And it's just, to be honest, I haven't been to Metro Court in longer than I would like to admit. I mean, my job is just not, as a commander, you just don't really do police work anymore. But they do check every day. There is a website that they can look up. The officers will check that. I know that they were toying with an idea of some type of a notification system, since we do have department cell phones. So I just don't know that I can find out more on that.
Yep. I guess you really have to use every bit of technology that's available to try to stay. Yeah. And mentioning technology, how are your new radios working?
They're good. They're not without glitches. As any new radio / computer system, I think there's still some bugs that have to be worked out. I do know some of the officers have, we brought it up that apparently officers can actually talk over dispatchers, which is really weird to us, because with our old radio system, it was actually the other way around. It's a little problematic for the dispatchers because they get what we call stepped on. And it does create some of that. There's some functions of the radio. If the radio goes horizontal, meaning, the antenna is now parallel to the ground, it sets off an alert tone. And it's designed for an officer safety function, which I get the argument. It makes perfect sense. However, if you have an officer who's bent over and they're doing something, say they're doing an inventory search of a vehicle, if they're bent over for too long, it goes off. Or if they're having to pat somebody down, it goes off. And when it goes off, it's because you're not expecting it, it scares everybody half to death. So I think it's a cool feature, but we're a little on the fence with it. But I think it's going to be here to stay. I know some officers are requested to have that turned off, and Chief Medina said no, that it stays. So we're just going to have to learn how to live with that. But I think otherwise, they seem to be okay. I don't think we have the dead spot issue as much as we used to have, because there was considerable dead spots in the foothills, largely around Lomas and Tramway, which is also kind of in line with, I guess, probably some cellular dead spots as well along the Tramway corridor. So, but other than that, they seem to be okay.
I assume the reason the warning goes off is the radio is designed to have the antenna vertical, and they fear that when you've got it horizontal, it's not going to communicate.
Well, no, because these things, and forgive me on the technology, but I know that being omnidirectional, you could literally have this radio upside down and it's strong enough to transmit to the repeater. The big reason for the horizontal alarm is for an officer down function. So that way, if the officer goes down for some reason and it's at night, we can't find it, we can listen for the tone and go straight to where that tone is. But again, some of the officers have reported that even a simple pat down, when they're bent over doing like a pat down on pant legs, it goes off and it just makes everybody jump. So they get a little annoyed with it.
I think it may have started with firefighters, didn't it, Commander? With the firefighter down because of smoke or injury in a fire?
I think they did have some type of an alarm system that they wore on their bunker gear that helped them. And yeah, entirely possible. I don't know that AFR has gotten new radios, received new radios like we did as of yet. But they're, like I said, they're nice. There's lots of frequencies on there, more than probably we'll ever use, to be honest. But they're nice to have if you're doing some kind of a special operation or something that won't tie up. Because the last thing we want to do is tie up area command channels. We need those open and free for officers and dispatchers.
There's a comment in chat that's interesting that I'd never thought of. Maybe David and Paul and Dahlia can read it and see if it's something that, you know, we might follow as an initiative. From Jean Hambrick.
It says, I've seen some unhomed folks wearing reflectors. Can a community service program hand out reflectors for clothing? A person wearing black clothing stepped into traffic in front of me in the dark on Eubank near Central recently. A couple of nights later, a group in the street had reflectors and were much easier to avoid. Hi, Jean.
I think that's probably something that I could pitch to ACS or Family and Community Services to see if that's even a possibility. I'll make a note for that because I'll meet with them again on this Friday morning. So I'll make a note of that and pitch that to them, and then I'll let Bob know, and then he can distribute it. You
know, that could be a non-threatening excuse for contact with somebody, either for ACS or for anybody in an official capacity.
Yeah, I think it's worth a, I think it's worth a shot to see if that's something that they would be able to do and maybe get some funding for that.
Can I say a comment? This is Idalia. So, you know, I'm in the neighborhood association for the Glenwood Hills. I'm on the board. And then also I'm on the board for my homeowners association. And one of the things that I'm going to bring up that, you know, this is just kind of my own thing. And Commander, you know, we would love to have you come speak. I know you're super busy, but we would love to have you come speak because we are kind of in the corner by Montgomery and Tramway where we see, you know, street racing. We see, yes, people walking and running without reflectors and a lot of accidents. There was a huge one just now, you know, this week right here, Montgomery and Tramway, 6 people went to the hospital. And I think one of the things that I learned in my ride along with Sergeant Tracy Dragger that I did earlier, you know, a couple months ago, I think it's the broken windows theory where, yes, there's a lot of businesses up here in the Northeast and, you know, kind of Tramway, Juan Tabo area. And as soon as there's a broken window in a business, and I've noticed this also, if the owner of the business doesn't fix it right away, it kind of, the image and the presentation style attracts more broken windows because the criminals say, oh, okay, well, you know, they don't really care. I'm gonna, so then little by little, they start going into, you know, to in that area because they they think, well, the neighborhood, the people don't care. So if a broken window gets fixed right away, it shows the criminals that the community is united, that the community cares, and then they, you know, they go somewhere else. Not that we want them to, you know, we want no crime at all, but I think it's true. And I think that, you know, if we, as community leaders, we could start with, you know, because we're all throughout the neighborhood associations in the Northeast Heights. If we could start that campaign and say, you know, kind of the broken window theory, and bring your neighbor to your neighborhood associations, bring those business owners that are in the surrounding areas, and kind of start building a relationship with them to say, hey, we're the neighborhood association that's near your business. We can help you. Keep an eye on, and you know, you can also help us combat crime. And I think that would be a good campaign that I'm thinking of starting here in the next, probably in January. I've spoken to a couple of my neighbors and they said, well, yeah, that's a good idea. What are your thoughts?
No, I think any type of, I guess, partnerships between, because, you know, when we do like the neighborhood watches, we kind of focus on residentials. And when we do some of the business coalitions, we focus on commercial or business properties. And we don't, and in some neighborhoods, there's no way to do a business partnership because you're so far away from businesses. But there are some that are literally right around the corner from businesses. So I think involving your business owners who are adjacent to your neighborhood association is a really good idea. It's helpful because, as I've always said, and I know when Samantha, the crime prevention specialist, the more eyeballs on something, the better, because we're watching each other and we're helping each other. So I think it's a great idea. I know, like Caracol Plaza over there at Montgomery and Tramway, I mean, that is a virtual ghost town now. There's nothing in there, but you do have the restaurant across the street. We still have Smith's, we have McDonald's, the little strip mall on the east side. And that's something that is immediately adjacent to those neighborhoods. Yeah, I think it would be a good thing. And if there's some dates coming up, possibly in January, you want me to come over to the association? Just send me an email or text, let me know.
Absolutely. I'll send you a message. Thank you, Commander.
You're very welcome.
Commander, one of the questions came up, maybe you can address it fairly easily. Lynn Martin asked, what were the businesses that were robbed? You've never discussed that with specifically named businesses. Maybe you could comment on why we haven't.
Yeah, and I apologize. I didn't come prepared to speak on specific businesses that were. I would have to look those up right now. I don't have any off the top of my head. But if that's something that, you know, we want to discuss in future CPCs, I'm happy to come prepared with that. That way I can give you, all of you, a rundown of what was robbed. I apologize.
It'd be helpful if, you know, we wouldn't want you to spend an hour briefing us on that, but if you might consider it as, but it might be.
What do you think if I see ones that might be like repeat locations? Would that be helpful? Okay.
Well, I think definitely in situations where commonly or frequently there's a significant threat or actual violence involved would be might be helpful too.
Sure. The thing I do want to make a distinction on, and when this has kind of gone both ways, and maybe our friends from the DA's office can help on this, but we'll have, say like Ross Dress for Less, the one that's at Wantabo Manal. They'll have someone who go in and grab an armful of clothing, and then they'll bypass the points of sale. Their asset protection will stop them to try to prevent them from taking that. And then the suspect or offender then threatens asset protection. So they typically will call that in as a robbery. But I think if you look at the definition of the statute, it's actually a shoplifting and an aggravated assault. One depending on the price of the clothing that has been taken or the items will tell you if that's a misdemeanor or a felony. And then you have the aggravated assault and if there's a weapon involved, but they're not technically like a robbery to an individual is if I walked up and I threatened you with force and I took something off of your person, like your wallet or your purse. So sometimes those are called in as robberies when they may actually just be a shoplifting and aggravated assault, but it stays on our CAD for the time being as a robbery. And I hope that makes sense because we do run into a little bit of that confusion. Nonetheless, it's really semantics. A crime was committed. But for our reporting, we do try to make some distinction as to if it's a legitimate robbery or somebody goes into a gas station with a gun, threatens the cashier, takes money out of the cash register. It's a robbery all day long. But the other scenario does give us a little bit of confusion.
I default to whatever Elizabeth says.
Perfect.
Yeah, Commander Collins was right on the point. I mean, a lot of times like the charging is just different. And even I'm in felonies currently, and there's a lot of crimes where you can look at a different charge and charge it multiple ways, but in the end, it's still a crime. But it's definitely just a charging legalese kind of semantics thing.
And my concern for the business owners, and I've talked to several of them, I don't want them to get hung up on the semantics of it. If a crime happens, I mean, they can report it as a robbery, they can report it as a shoplifting, because what's going to happen is it's going to get investigated, and then it'll be sent into the DA's office, and then the DA will decide based on the facts of the case what's most appropriate moving forward. So, but that's where we do get some of the robbery data, is the fact that sometimes it's not actually a robbery. And we do our best, the officers, they try to do their best to change the 10 code through dispatch. So that way for our CADs, it's accurately represented, but I'll tell you, it's not 100% because sometimes they get sidetracked and they forget to change the CAD. So I have to go in and look at it and see what it is. But I can easily bring you repeat locations on things. So just tell me what y'all want to see and I'll do my best to provide it for the next one.
And that CAD's, that's the computer assisted dispatch.
Another credit acronym, sorry, computer aided dispatch, yes.
You mentioned before that the CAD's statistics are raw statistics.
Mm-hmm. They are.
And the reality when the officer arrives at the scene may be quite different from what was related to the 911 operator.
Yes, unfortunately, that does happen quite a bit. We'll get a call for service and we'll be told one thing while we're driving over there, and we get there, it is nothing like what was described. So we do, I mean, there's a lot of useful information on the CAD printout, but we also kind of have to take it with a grain of salt in some circumstances. And we had this discussion a long time ago. CADs are different than crime statistics. Crime statistics have been vetted through our record system, and those would be reportable to the nationwide database. So, but that's not until the investigation is completed and we've actually determined that it is what it is. A CAD is just the call that comes in from a caller, and the description is provided to 911 or 242 cops and then sent to us. So it's not an actual statistic in the sense of statistics, but it does give us an idea of numbers of calls for service of something in an area.
Excellent. Idalia, you've got your hand up again.
Yeah, I just wanted to inquire. So, a couple of the, the Neighborhood Association for Glenwood Hills and the Homeowners Association where I'm at, we had a dead body that was collected. The
corner of Tramway, Montgomery, you know that bus area, the bus station, and then where one of the APD substations is. There was a gentleman there that started living kind of there in the bus stop on Wednesday. And I think he passed Friday or Saturday. Anyways, they collected the body, but we were just wondering, because it's very rare to see just a dead body, right? But do we know what happened? We did see the crime van, and then so they took the body, and then another car from City of Albuquerque came and collected his belongings. Do we know what happened to him?
I do not know off the top of my head, but I can find out for you.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Okay, we're coming up on the close of our festivities here. And are there additional questions?
I know David had his hand up. David, do you still have that question, or are you good? I saw your hand up for a bit.
I'm sorry, who were you referring to?
David.
Well, it was just an observation or suggestion. If we're going to start distributing reflectors, it's going to have to be something like reflective tape, because I don't think that people are going to wait around for a sewing job on their trousers. Just a thought.
Good point. Yes. And again, the comment was made by Joshua Boone that that a lot of these decisions on presentations in court are procedural matters which are decided by the state Supreme Court. So again, that's something that's a political thing, but it's also a legal thing. So get in contact with your representatives and with the court administrators and let them know how you feel about that. And I'm going to take this opportunity to thank Elizabeth Bates. Thank you very much. And Joshua Boone, thank you, thank you. We really appreciate you taking this evening and devoting it to us. We didn't give you quite as much time just for your presentation, but you certainly added a lot to our other issues that have come up. And Commander Collins, as usual, thank you, and to all of our people. I see that Assistant U.S. Attorney Josephine Martinez has been very patient being here, and I think she has also congratulated Idalia for her participation in the Nutcracker. It's a wonderful talent that she has and that she's sharing with our community.
Thank you. We're the only ballet with a live orchestra. And in case anyone cares, I'm dancing act 1, and I'm the mother of a flower and of a rat. With Tchaikovsky, like a mice, you know, Nutcracker. So I think we need that, you know, now that, you know, a lot of deaths, COVID's going up, but I think we need this as a community. So come support it. Thank you.
And another thing I want to point out is, again, is Graham Boket is our professional level, decorated, award-winning photographer. And I say it lightly, but I mean it sincerely. And we really appreciate your skills and ability and the fact that you're taking the lead on the portrait of these heroic officers. So thank you, Graham. You
shouldn't say thank you before. You should wait to see if it's worth saying thank you.
I have no doubt we've been using your panoramic shots in our newsletters right along. People don't often comment on that, but wow, that's been an amazing addition to our newsletters, and it's a nice closing statement.
Well, tell everybody to come and see Shades of Grey at Expo, New Mexico. It's
yes,
open,
is that going on another week?
Until the 28th of December.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's tell them. Shades of Grey at Expo, New Mexico. You pull into the gate 3, I think it is. And,
Copper. Yeah, Copper.
Yeah, Copper and San Pedro. And
it's an exhibition of black and white photographs from New Mexico photographers.
Yes. And art, photography as art. Although I did see one color photo that was snuck in one of the rooms, the displays. All the rest were black and white. It was just a thrilling display. It was amazing, the talents involved. And Graham has 3 of his efforts on display there. And I hope that they all won awards.
No award.
So, but it was just amazing things. So if you can get down there, it's from 2 to 4 in the afternoon. Is that?
No. It's 9 to 5.
No, it is 9 to 5.
9 to 5, yeah.
And that's on Saturday and Sunday?
That's every day but Sunday, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be there on the 20th. They hooked me in to be on just be there to talk to people.
Okay, on the 20th is a Monday.
Yeah, 20th all afternoon. I'll be there from 1 to 5.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, and thank everybody for in our public Community Policing Council members out there. We had a very nice turnover. Excellent questions tonight. Thank you very much, and we'll see you guys again. See everybody again soon. Please stay well and take care of each other. And I think with that, we can close the business frame. Thank you all.
Bye. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and hopefully we'll see you all next year.
Indeed.